Hello and welcome to another episode of The Man from Hildebrand. Yes, I just thought I'd just let the dust settle because we've had some major news come in. Um, Now, yes, it's took us by surprise. Many of us are kind of a little bit concerned, and a lot of us are kind of in shock. I must admit that when I first saw the news, I wasn't at all shocked or kind of surprised. I just thought, fuck, um, this is going to be a disaster. I immediately thought of the Disney Star Wars buyout, thinking, my God, Amazon are going to just drain it and just totally saturate it and do all sorts to it. It's been kind of interesting. I mean, I've been watching a lot of videos and stuff, and there is actually a lot of videos out there which are quite negative. For some strange reason, all week I've been waking up at 2 o'clock, so I now not only am I the man from Hildebrand, I'm now become a man who seems to be living off only 3.5 4 hours of sleep. So come Friday morning, I once again wake up at 2 o'clock and I start thinking, try and reason and thinking, well, is it really going to be that bad? Who knows? We do not know what the outcome is going to be. What we've got to remember, though, is that Amazon have got creative control. That is it. Eon, Barbara still own the intellectual property, which is James Bond. They still own it. Obviously, Dan Jack, they still have the trademarks and licenses and all this and that. What's happened is Amazon have come forward, offered them $1 billion to get creative control. According to some articles, they were saying that this was obviously a tough decision for Barbara. We know how protective Barbara is of the legacy because it has been passed down to her father. The one thing Cubby said to her was, don't let other people screw it up. Over the years, that's been misinterpreted because obviously, when Daniel Craig died, oh, well, Cubby's spinning in his grave because she's fucked it up, and Cubby said, don't screw it up. No, the quote was, don't let other people screw it up. Now, Barbara's not going to just come across and say, oh, here's $1 billion, thank you very much. What is, I would imagine that they would have been in agreement. They would be in agreement and there would be a stipulation of what can be done and what can't be done. What that is, I don't know. So, let's just have a look. I think what's kind of worried us the most is that, it seems to be months after the Wall Street Journal had reported that Barbara just wasn't getting on with Amazon. She referred to them as fucking idiots. Michael Wilson had trouble getting up to, the higher level management. Some high people in Amazon refer to Bond as just being content. And is James Bond still a hero? Still an hero. Obviously that's kind of a little bit worrying, thinking, well, okay, I mean, wasn't that long ago I actually did a video on, what happens if they don't come to an agreement. Would Barbara sell out, or would Amazon just give up, or what? I'm surprised Barbara has kind of sold out. I thought she would have fought it, but the thing is, I say, they would be stipulations. They would be things that they cannot or can't do. I don't think Barbara would have let it go on that easily. They basically paid $1 billion for creative control. I would imagine that within that $1 billion would have been, included for the use of the trademark for so many years. So obviously, the gun barrel, the 007 logo, certain trademarks I'd have seen in the film which belong to Dan Jack, which is still, obviously owned by the Broccoli family. They were set up by the Broccoli family. So, we are still in safe hands. Not all is totally lost. it would have been good if Barbara kind of, if they said Barbara would have stayed on as a creative consultant. That would have probably, sort of been a little bit comforting. But nothing's ever been mentioned about that. But I would think in the background, Barbara would, keep a close eye on it. So yeah, I mean, what to expect? It would be, obviously development for Bond 26 will probably now happen a lot sooner than we would have thought or anticipated. Now, it's kind of who is now going to be Bond. Now, when Amazon have got creative control, it means that it's down, that they can cast, they can basically get their team of writers in, their directors, the people, whoever. Will they get Neil Purvis, Robert Reid back? Probably not. They're probably going to just start again. The chances are they would still have a gun barrel. We'll still have the gun barrel. We'll have a pre-title. We'll have the title song. If you haven't got that, then what's the point of having a fucking James Bond film? You have got to have them trademarks. Because that is what makes it unique. Bond is a genre on its own, and it's 60-year-old franchise. It's been crafted beautifully. There's such a rich history there, which I just hope that somebody at Amazon, and this is it, understands that. I mean, obviously with the comments that were made, it is a bit unnerving, but I mean, in the statement, there's a chap head of the film department at MGM, Amazon, Mike Hopkins, saying, we're very grateful for this, and they understand how how important Bond is and the legacy it carries. So the thing is to obviously try and continue that, and you've got to include them trademarks. And I think that's why I'm saying that I think within this $1 billion deal, they would have bought in them certain things. Now the actor, could it be a relatively unknown actor, which ideally I would prefer, because that's what they've done in the past. Why fix it if it's not broken? I mean, Amazon, they ain't short of money. Are they going to just spend fucking shitloads on it and then hire a big name like Henry Cavill? I hope not. Could the actor be a well-known name? Could the actor be American? Could the actor be black? Who knows? That's, unknown territory. So, yeah. Or, I mean, the thing, yeah, we are a little bit unsure because we don't know what to expect. And I suppose it's probably like sort of, one day you discover that what was once your childhood home for the first 16 years, where you've got so many wonderful memories, you've had so many happy times there, you've had so many Christmases there, so many family gatherings, so many pets, so many birthdays, and then you discover that it's in the planning process of being demolished. You're there thinking, oh God, what, is it going to be an improvement, or is it going to be, a monstrosity? I'm not saying you can improve on the Bond franchise, because it is what it is, and that's why we love it. But it's just, we all have such a strong connection to Bond in one way or another. That's why we're here. That's why we are Bond fans. That's why I'm doing this video for you guys. That's why I'm sitting in a room surrounded by Bond shit, because it is an obsession. More an obsession to us than some of us, but Bond is a huge part of us. It is in our DNA. And this is a massive change. We probably haven't, since the 60-odd years history, this is probably the first time it's kind of happened, because now creative control are going outside the Broccoli's. But I think, I honestly think there would have been an agreement and do's and don'ts, and I think, Bob, I think we should be okay. Yeah, I mean, hopefully it would mean that we will probably get a film I reckon every 3 years. I think 2 years is pushing it because they are big films, they are complicated. So I think, we would probably go one every 3 years. Now, the other thing, what concerns me is, will they, have stunts done for real, or would it be all CGI? Would it be a lot of green screen? I hope not, because that's what makes Bond unique, is that all the stunts are done for real. But as we know, that they have become complicated films. I don't blame. I kind of get why Barbara has decided to just basically take a back seat, because they are. It is hard work. Michael's in his 80s, he's retired, fair enough, hats off to him, I don't blame him. Barbara's now, 60 plus. These films, they are huge, complicated productions. They take up to about 9 months. They are global. They probably can be a logistical nightmare. They are massive, and Barbara kind of just wants to just do the theatre productions and the small independent productions, which I don't blame her. Now, what you've also got to remember is that back in the 80s, which actually I think the 1980s is a very underrated period for Bond, and I'm going to do a video on that later on. The 80s, it was lovely, because we had a decade where we was guaranteed, we got five Bonds within 10 years. It was a 2-year period. Roger Moore kept doing it, then it went straight from Roger Moore to Timothy Dalton. Cubby wanted to do other films. He wanted to do non-Bond films. United Artists said, well, if you do that, we'll get somebody else in to do the Bond films. Cubby, he got him by the balls. He wasn't happy to do that. Anybody could make a Bond film. As Kevin McClory could make a Bond film. Anybody could make a Bond film. But, for them to use the gun barrel and certain trademarks and stuff, they would have to pay Dan Shack a certain amount. So yeah, Barbara Wash is in her 60s now. Cubby, when he was in 60s, he kind of had Harry at the side of him, and eventually there was probably about 3 years where he was on his own, because obviously he had to deal with the split up between him and Harry. But then Michael came along, and then as Cubby got older, Barbara then got involved, and then eventually passed down to Cubby, to Barbara and Michael. What we was expecting was maybe, Barbara and Greg, Michael's son, would have probably seen it through and then took it off. But, these films aren't as simple as they used to be. 80s was like a production factory. They're just churning them out one after the other. It was easy. They had the same team. There's still some Fleming stories there which they could adapt, and they kept doing it. They even managed to change Bond actor within the 80s. So, pretty impressive. Obviously, the thing is within the first 25 years of the franchise, we got from 62 to 87, we got 15 Bond films. In the last 30 years of the franchise, we've got 9. It's pretty much halved. And, that's not necessarily down to Barbara, that's down to the studios. There's more people involved. MGM went up for sale so many times. You'd have difficulty getting an actor to commit to a film every 2 years. So, these films ain't as easy as they used to be. So, I think, to get a film every 3 years, I think would be reasonable. We possibly, I say, Amazon have got shitloads of money. They could, and I really hope that they could probably approach IFP and say, look, can we just adapt some of your continuation novels? The Gardner novels, they need massively updated, but they've got fantastic titles. Even if they're just paid for the title. Bond 26, license renewed. You can't really think of an appropriate title. Bond's back, everything's sorted, license has been renewed. How wonderful. For special services, Icebreaker, Seafire, Nobody Lives Forever. You've got some cracking titles out there. You know, I mean, Colonel's Son, you know, update that. You know, there is so much that Amazon could do with it. Now, in terms of spin-offs, we don't know if that is yet allowed. We don't, again, you know, but it might be in the stipulation. I don't know. People are jumping the gun. Yeah, 15 years ago, if you said, oh yeah, you know, Amazon have bought Bond and they're going to do spin-offs, I'd be like, oh my God, I'd be like, yeah, you know. But the difference is I'm no longer a fanboy. I'm a fan man. You know, as you get older, your views change. You probably become a little bit more refined. I've got no issue with spin-offs, providing that they do it good and they do it properly and they don't oversaturate it like they've done with Star Wars. I don't want to spin off with Q. I don't want to spin off with Moneypenny. I don't want, you know, spin-offs from the janitor who was seen in the living daylight. You know, you've got to do it sensibly and you've got to do it sparingly. What I would like to see is a limited series starring Lashana Lynch, you know, about her 007 character set between Spectre and No Time to Die. See her origin stories, see how she earned her 2 kills, and just see a few missions of it. Just have a bit more on her. I think, you know, because I mean, what they did with her character and how they played it in No Time to Die, I absolutely fucking loved. I thought it was absolutely brilliant and ingenious, only because I kind of slightly sort of predicted it. So yeah, I would love to see a limited series on that. I would also, and I've said this before in a previous video, I would like to see a serialised, faithful adaptation of Moonraker, black and white, film noir, possibly as Benedict Cumberbatch's Bond. You could probably do one of the Spy Love Me as well, but I say only don't do all of them because you're going to kill it. Say, you know, you can't do a faithful adaptation of Casino Royale because I think we've already had Casino Royale. I think it's still too fresh. You know, it means in total we've had 4 adaptations of Casino Royale, a bit too much. Live and Let Die, you obviously can't do a faithful adaptation because of obvious reasons. Moonraker you can. Moonraker, it's not really that controversial, and it was actually, you know, Fleming had written it as a basis for a film anyway. And, you know, I think it's a fan's dream to have a faithful adaptation of Moonraker. You can do that. But I don't think you can do all of them, you know. So I think you've got to be really, really selective in what you do on that. James Bond Jr., yeah, come on. Get that from the vaults, get it cleaned up, get it available to stream. Just for us hardcore Bond fans, you know. Probably a good way to kind of introduce your kids into as well, even though it is like 30 odd years old, probably a little bit outdated, probably a little crappy, but it's part of the Bond legacy. You know, revive it. I'm not saying reboot James Bond Jr. No. Just get it out there. An animated series based on the Charlie Higson Young Bonds and Steve Cole Young Bonds. Yeah. I'm kind of up for that, you know. Give it like the Kevin, I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the Silverfin graphic novel, but Kevin Walker, he did all the illustrations and characters and stuff for the Young Bonds. Just get an animated series based on them styles, you know, get it out. Faithful Young Bond adaptations, animated. People going about spin-off with Felix. The more I think about that, yeah, I like it, but I think that way you could then start causing problems, because with Felix, would you have the same character, you know, same actor in the TV series as you would in the films? Would it then become one of them scenarios where you've got to watch the TV series to then understand certain references and certain plot points in a film? You know, that's where it becomes a little bit Marvel-esque, and I'm not really 100% sort of down on that. And you could, you know, approach IFP and say, look, we want to buy the rights to the Kim Sherwood trilogy. Do a TV series. I mean, I've still got to read them, but would that work as a TV series? The Double or Nothing series, you know, trilogy as a TV series. You know, there's there's things you could do, you know, or you could probably adapt the Moneypenny Diaries. You know, there is things, but you've got to do it sparingly. You've got to be really careful. You know, give us a Bond film every 3 years, but just give us these little things, you know, in between. I mean, Amazon may, you know, obviously we've got 007 Road to a Million. Now the second season is planned. Now I actually really enjoyed that. I mean, yeah, I hope they kind of tweak things for the second season, but that was in development before Amazon took over anyway. Where when Amazon bought it, they thought, well, we might as well distribute it, but that wasn't really an Amazon production. But yeah, they could do that. They would no doubt probably give us more documentaries. I mean, I don't know what there is to document about Bond, I don't know, but you could do more documentaries. Give us a faithful adaptation of Fleming's life based on the Nicholas Shakespeare biography. That alone, ladies and gentlemen, will be another video, because I've got so much sort of to say on that. So yeah, I mean, you know, obviously, you know, we are a little bit worried, but I think we've just got to remember that not all is lost. Eon still own it. You know, Dan Shacker still own it. You know, still got the copyright, and I really believe that there would have been an agreement with stipulations and stuff. You can't do this, you can't do that. Barbara's not daft. She is very protective. I mean, yeah, she was very hesitant in letting it go. You know, they gave her the $1 billion, which, but I would imagine it wouldn't have just been, you know, take the money and run. They would have been stipulations and agreements. So yeah, I mean, the people are like kind of questioning, you know, will this affect the La La Land releases? No, I don't think it did. I mean, when Amazon had 50% control of it, it never affected the releases. And I can't see why it would. You know, they've got creative control, which means it's a movies. The only effect it would have on is that as soon as the development of, well, probably when Bond 26 starts getting into production, once we get the trailers, once it's get promoted, that's probably when they'll have to hold off. But otherwise, I think this year we will still see, you know, the anniversary expanded releases, and we will see, I hope, some other merchandise. Now, I haven't done a one of these videos, you know, the week in news for Bond for 2 weeks, so I do have a lot to say and a lot to cover, but I think just this shocking, you know, this major move is just worth an episode of itself. So yeah, I mean, at first I was very cautious. I was a little bit skeptical, thinking, fuck, they're going to fuck it up. But the more I've thought about it, I've kind of thought, well, you know what? They haven't lost it totally. You know, they've still got, you know, they still own it. And I really do believe that there would have been stipulations and agreements on what they can and cannot do. Whether or not they will give us spin-offs, TV series, I don't know. None of us know. But yeah, I say, if it's done correctly, if it's done right, we will be okay. And if we get, you know, I say, you know, I mean, I think this year, later on this year, we'll get some news on Bond 26. Obviously, they'll have to get a director, get script writers, get actors. I would imagine that, you know, the backs behind the scenes, Eon will still have, Barbara would still have something to do with. I'm sure she will probably even go to the premiere as well. Greg Wilson might even be credited. He might be, you know, sort of executive producer. I don't know. I mean, sometimes executive producers does mean something, or it's just basically just on there so they can receive more money. So yeah, it's one of them things where you can't start worrying until it happens. But yeah, I totally understand why people are a little bit dubious, a little bit cautious, because it's just going into the unknown territory. But yeah, I really do believe that there would have been an agreement, there would have been stipulations, um, and yeah, so it's a very sort of interesting time for Bond fans. I mean, what's also interesting is the fact that, you know, this has only come after a week or so when it was reported that an Austrian property developer was planning on taking Eon and Danjak to court over the lack of the James Bond trademark. Because according to UK and European law, if a trademark isn't used within 5 years, you can lose it and somebody else can have it. Now, this again kind of raises questions because it's like, well, is this Austrian property developer totally thick as fuck? Because, you know, yeah, James Bond is still being used, it is still being branded. But then on the other hand, when you think about it, when you look at products like All Bar Brown, Enfield, Amiga, it's just branded as 007. The 007 logo is still in use, but not James Bond. But apparently James Bond 007 is still in use on other things as well. So again, I mean, I mean, is it coincidental? I mean, did that put the shitters up and think, fuck, we've got to make a decision here? I don't know. The chances are this was probably, you know, probably done, arranged weeks after, you know, the Wall Street Journal had reported that things weren't looking good. But then, you know, even though the report came out on the 20th of December, doesn't necessarily mean that things weren't looking good the day before. It could have been weeks. I mean, I think that article had basically collected pieces of information that had been happening over the months. So this deal could have been made last month. It could have been made 6 weeks ago. It could have probably been made just before Christmas, just when Barber's comment on fucking idiots had come out. That could have been the day, 20th of December, could have been the day when the deal was made. And, you know, the media and stuff, they do delay things, but for legal reasons, they probably then obviously made a statement, the lawyers had to go through it, and then they release it. So it doesn't necessarily mean this agreement and this arrangement would have been made last week. It could have been made a month or so ago. So yeah, I'm pretty confident that they, you know, Barber would have put stipulations into it. There's also, you know, talks now of public domain, which apparently happens in 2035. So we've got 10 years. Now, Hildebrand member James Chapman, who is also responsible for License to Thrill, and he's a bit of a dude in himself, has actually posted on the Hildebrand group a very interesting post regarding public domain, regarding Bond, and it's again, it's really, it's probably a lot more easier for the literature side of Bond to lose control, which it already has in some countries. I mean, in Japan, they've now released a Tiger Tanaka adventure, totally unauthorised, totally unofficial, set after You End of Twice, the film, I believe. And Canada, a few years ago, they did License Expired, which was a collection of short stories by fans, and my God, what an awful read that is. So yeah, the literature side is probably a little bit more easier to get round than the film side. If you read his article, it's not an article by James Chapman, but it's by it's something that he posted, and it's a very interesting read. It's basically saying that the film Bond, you know, the cinematic Bond, isn't as easy. You know, there's a lot of ifs and buts, and if somebody does try and, you know, make their own version of it, they have got to have deep pockets because it is a bit complicated. So in terms of the cinematic Bond going to public domain in 2035, I wouldn't worry about it. It's really not that straightforward a case. So yeah, and also what's interesting, it was only a couple of weeks, it might have been even last week or the week before, that Corinne Turner had stepped down from being the managing director of Ian Fleming Publications. I mean, whether or not all this is connected, I don't know, or it could be coincidental. So yeah, it's. I mean, IFP have just done a statement about Amazon. So yeah, it'd be interesting. But yeah, I mean, there is obviously a lot of potential that they could do with Bond, but I think it's down to the fact that they need somebody in charge of the Bond department at Amazon who knows it inside out and will cherish it and will look after it and will respect it. But I also do believe that this, agreement and stipulations would have been put in place. The do's and don'ts. I don't think Barbara would have just let it go straight away. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a bit of an exciting time for Bond fans. Whether or not a film Bond 26 will come first, or if we get a TV series will come first, I don't know. But yeah, there is a lot of articles on there saying it's basically fucked, and oh yeah, Jeff Bezos now the blowfell. I'm thinking, really, just shut up. That's what I think. But it's one of them where you've got to suck it and see it, and I really don't think they're going to screw it up, because I think Barbara is still going to watch it with a very close eye until the day she dies. But then when she, I think Greg Wilson is still involved in it one way or another. But yes, we will see. We will see. So yeah, it's a very interesting time, and definitely an interesting revelation as well. But I say, not all is lost. That is what we've got to remember. Not all is lost. So, anyway, for next time, that is it. So, try not to worry. Try and be a little bit positive, and just remember that, Barbara and Eon still own the intellectual property. It's when Bond is then up on the market for sale as an internet, that's when you've got to worry. But otherwise, I think, I really do believe there'd have been an agreement and stipulations for Amazon, because I really don't think Barbara would have just gone, here, $1 billion, thank you very much. She is basically, letting somebody have creative control of something that she's had creative control for 30 plus years, and something that her father has had for 30 plus years before that. This is a 60-year-old legacy. This is, the biggest film franchise, well, the most successful cinematic film franchise in history, owned by a family. So yeah, I think we are still good. I really think we are still good.